So welcome to the PTSA and SEPTA Budget Forum. We're here today to discuss the budget for the next school year. And we have Bill McCursey, Melissa Szymanski, and Maureen Caraballo here to take it away. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, PTSA SEPTA. And I know we have a small number with us tonight. A few of you may have heard because you're back behind the screen. We just opened the screen, but no difference. So we're going to go through the full plan we had since this is being recorded. We really appreciate PTSA SEPTA's leadership all the way through all kinds of things. As many know, I sit monthly with them. Maureen, Melissa joined me in that. Jean Frigio, our soon to be with us July 1, Jen Holder, as our new assistant super for PPS, who's actually been in the district a lot the last couple of weeks. She's helping on a key new appointment, the new assistant director in special ed. But she'll be very active with us. And I appreciate PTSA SEPTA urging us to be virtual tonight. I don't like getting stuck in the old virtual box. However, we did this as a way to be more accessible and available during a very busy time of the year. And also now the recording, this will be available. Before I hand it to Maureen, who, because this is in the public record, we will repeat some key points and we have some new updates, some new information. But let me stress one thing right out of the blocks. We're spending a lot of time on this budget, the operating and instructional budget. The vote is May 19th, a week from tonight. And it's really important people show up, vote your conscience. I think this budget is really essential to us. It's essential to our students, our families, our staff. I want to make it really clear, it is separate. It is separate from the capital bond. Anyone who has questions, comments, thoughts about any aspect of the capital bond, Prop 1, Prop 2, Prop 3. I know there's a lot of discussion right now about the artificial turf fields. I respect that discussion. I respect the back and forth there. That is a separate issue. So I would urge everyone who has any thoughts on the capital bond, do not let those filter into your views on the budget. This is the annual budget. You will vote your conscience, and we also will help you see why it is so important for us going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maureen, and then after that, Maureen will turn it over to Melissa, and I think then we can come up for air for questions. If you can just hold on to your questions until that point. All right, thank you.
Hi. So as Bill said, I will go through some budget slides. We had created a presentation for the last budget forum for the PTSA. We've modified that a bit. But again, we discussed, there is some repetition in it, but again, we're not sure who may have tuned into the last time. So we certainly just want to, focus on some of the overarching themes of the budgets, the targeted investments that are being proposed as part of this year's spending plan, and just some information around those. So I'm going to share my screen. Just give me 1 second. And I will, okay. Give me 1 second. I should have, oh, here we are, sorry. Share. Are you seeing my screen? Oh, there we are. Okay, there we go. I guess I could do a full screen. Click here when I'm ready. Start slideshow. Okay. Everyone's in there, right? Okay, perfect. Again, this is some information. We're going to go through it rather quickly. And then, of course, as Bill said, at the end, there'll be time for Q&A. But, we do like to keep this in there as there is some information people may not have seen earlier. So, again, just as a reminder, these numbers have not changed for the last month and a half or so. Currently, we're showing a proposed spending plan of approximately $65 million. Well, not approximately, almost $66 million for next year. And you can see that on the top, that's the expenditure change. And on the bottom, the various sources of revenues that support our budget. Of course, the largest of which is the local property taxes, which you can see next year. There's a proposed levy of $51 million, which basically would impact for more or less the taxpayers, this budget would increase people's tax about 3.57%, and that's based on current assessed valuation that we have from the town of Greenburgh. One of the questions we did receive tonight was in regards to the state aid amount that the district receives, and I did create a slide to discuss that a bit and how that may compare to other local districts. So as you can see here currently, on the governor's proposal, we're anticipating about close to $8.9 million for next year to support our budget. That amount of money has increased significantly over the past 3 years or so. We're seeing definitely more dollars coming in from the state, although again, that's something that the state has warned about their ability to continue to do so. And, but although currently there is not a state finalized budget, which makes it a bit difficult, but we're proceeding with that initial proposed amount. Here is a slide, and this is just in response to the question that had come in. And this is based upon last year's data, because as I had mentioned, the state budget has not yet been finalized. So due to that, I'm using last year's numbers and how that breaks down as a percentage of our total budget in terms of revenue. So as you can see, for our budget, for Hastings last year, 13.6% of our revenue did come from the state, and the reason I selected, obviously Irvington and Dobbs Ferry are our Rivertown neighbors, but they're also similarly sized to Hastings, as is Bronxville in terms of total enrollment. Irvington being a little slightly higher than us by about 100 students, Dobbs about 150 students less, and Bronxville almost the exact same student enrollment. But as you can see, comparatively, we do receive more state aid than our neighbors in terms of a percentage of our total budget. Now, one thing, again, this is percentage. As an example, Irvington, as I've mentioned in other meetings, has a significantly larger budget, right? So the percentage of that budget is, of course, going to be lower. They may, in fact, receive similar tax dollars to us. It's just that, like, as an example, as I mentioned on an earlier slide, our current proposed budget for next year is $65 million. Their proposed budget for next year is $79 million. So, that's, again, partly because they do spend more, and that's why some of the percentages there are less. I had mentioned this, and this is just a point of reference. Upstate New York districts such as Buffalo, Syracuse, districts such as those, they're part of the Big Five, but they're also the property value up there, and also the amount of personal wealth is much lower. In some cases, they receive about 80 or 90% of their funding from New York State. So it's a significant lower Hudson region, Westchester, including Yonkers, receives actually a very small percentage of their budget from the state, believe it or not. These, again, are just reminders of the various areas of the budget that push the inevitable cost increases. Primarily, we're a people organization. We have, I don't even know how many employees, 300, 400 employees now, with between part-timers and full-timers and contracts. And for the most part, that's where the bulk of our increases come from. Another area in which we've spoken a lot about this year and last year is the increase in health insurance. This has been a conversation amongst my colleagues. I was sharing with Bill the other day that a neighboring district's board actually is, because in some cases it's caused a lot of districts to either have to cut significant staff and or seek overrides, because the increase to our health insurance over the past 3 years is about 30 to 32% increase. So and again, this is a significant cost item. So, we're talking about in the millions of dollars of just in that one line item, we're seeing increases there. So again, something that we don't have control over. But again, that we have been told that is going to continue, that trend of increases that we've seen, inevitably they're projecting that for future years as well. Again, increases in the cost of our pension costs, transportation, all the rest, and of course, just utilities and things to run our building. Revenue highlights, as I had mentioned on an earlier slide, we do, beyond our property taxes and our state aid, there are some other areas in which we receive various revenues, our own interest income, portion of the county sales tax. Every dollar that we receive is extremely important. And when those dollars go up, it's great. But when they go down, it's also requires us then to make reductions on the expenditure side. So obviously expenditure is extremely important, but any change in our revenue streams would also then require us to make reductions on the spending side. So we feel it's the need to balance that budget. These are things that I've kind of gone over before, and I think it's good for the record to see the challenges. And this is really to do with our state and federal funding, right? So these things are really about, again, goes back to that percentage that we receive from the state, which again gets their money from the federal government. A very small percentage of what we have comes from state and federal sources, leaving the true burden on local taxpayers. And again, this is part of the reason why that's so challenging, especially in places like Westchester County that have very, very high property wealth, which immediately means that you're going to get a lot less funding from the state and the federal government. One of the things, and this is now talking about how we approach our budget each year beyond the normal year-to-year over increases and keeping things in place. One of the main areas that was a significant area of focus this year in developing the budget, there's a significant what we believe is an investment in both the areas of math and special education. There are other increases in staff, which we'll just touch upon on a future a slide in a few moments. But this was really one of the main focus areas of this budget. And you can see based upon that, and again, this is based upon needs and all the rest, you'll see where there was targeted staffing increases, targeted money for professional learning for not only these two areas, but again, a significant increase there to ensure that all of the things, and Melissa will share some slides later, and she's shared some at a previous PTSA SEPTA meeting about the new math progressions and all the rest, and due to that, there's an increase in staffing as well as PD around those areas. This again is just a breakdown. We've shared this before, but for those who may not have seen it, it does show the increases in staffing at each building level. And, where the special education, you'll see it's spread across all three buildings. This is the increases at our Hillside Elementary School, and gives you some sense of what is being proposed there. At the Farragut Middle School, again, as I had mentioned earlier, there's an increase in special education and primarily to support our math classes. And it's related to Melissa Szymanski's presentation she has done previously on mathematics at the middle school and the need to support different classes there. There's a slight increase in E&L. And again, you'll see there's a redeployment of a position that allows for a dedicated reading interventionist next year at Farragut Middle School, which is currently we're lacking there. And some of the other breakdowns, an increase in science and some other things that they're going to be able to do next year at the Farragut Middle School. And at the high school, again, with the theme with the targeted increases in math and special ed in particular, you'll see the nearly a full-time, this will now become a full-time position, which is currently a part-time math position at the high school. And again, it's to really help bolster and support the AIS, as well as offering some additional math sections at the high school. There's also an increase in science, and in particular, the special education increases there to support some higher level ICT classes listed on the right there: geometry, algebra 2, and chemistry. We'll be opening up sections of ICT there next year. And again, this is, we've gone over this before again, but just to highlight again, the target investment areas, and in terms of where, as we looked at the budget and trying to make, priority decisions, and this was another area that you see the MTS support at the middle school and high school, and by adding and the redeployment of staff, there's a targeted support that will be available next year at the middle school and high school. And again, there was another area in our budget that, although I'm sure there were many things that we would have loved to have more money to support, there is this focus area and alignment around the math. And this is really a lot to do with the focus of the summer work that our teachers engage in with Melissa Szymanski and the chair people and all who are involved there. And of course, continue work in ELA. So again, there's some targeted money in our budget, and we really try to protect that to ensure that this work happens. Again, some of this is repetitious, so I won't necessarily go through each slide here again, but again, we showed you where the special ed investments and how they are being broken down per building. And this is, again, just summary slides. We think it's just important. These also include some questions that we had received in regards to within the special education portion of the budget to confirm that we are, in fact, having the structure which we've had previously, which is the assistant superintendent of special education supported by the 2 assistant directors. So we just, although this is not something new, we wanted to ensure that people knew that things such as that was actually absolutely planned for next year. And again, the continuation of that special education chairperson, which for many years had not been filled, but is filled currently, and we are, our budget is proposing to continue with that. There's also another just quick little highlight. The district is, after many, many years of not running a dedicated, it's actually an ESY program. It's extended school year program at Hillside School this year for students that need that type of setting in those type of classrooms. So that's something that we supported in this budget as well.
Marie, let me give just, if you go back to that slide quickly.
Sure, of course.
Yeah,
Yep.
I won't interrupt much, but I had mentioned in the opening that Jen Holder, the incoming assistant super for PPS, effective July 1, she's been giving us a lot of time in the last couple of weeks to make sure we land a very strong assistant director for special ed. And I think it's excellent she's given us that time. That'll have to be her appointment. I would have to make the offer. We had a very strong advisory committee working with them, and we're getting close to a decision. But I just want everyone to know that it's key that Jen Holder's part of that. The other thing that people know is that she's working to have good continuity with Jean Frigio, and she'll also be spending some time, the next several weeks meeting with members of the entire special ed, internal family and external. She wants to make time for that. But anyway, go ahead, Maureen.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Bill. And again, this is, we've shown this slide before during many of our budget presentations, and this kind of gives you the holistic view of how the proposed budget and how that supports the K-12 support for special education, and how that some new programs that we've spoken to at great length during our budget presentations about some new programming that's coming into each building at Hillside and Middle, and again, how that also just kind of supports the entire K-12 continuum. And just as a reminder, within this budget, we know how important it is for our students to have things to be connected to outside of the traditional school day. So again, we have kept funding in place for theater and music and all the different clubs and offerings that we have. And this is under the co-curricular part of our budget. We've also included some dedicated money for the continuation of chaperoning fees needed to run the Frost Valley trip, which was, I believe, a great success this year. And thank you to the PTSA and I'm not sure, in SEPTA for helping support that trip this year. I think it was a great success. So we have included some additional funding there to support that trip for next year. And then in terms of athletics, again, this is just a snapshot of our current offerings. And again, everything that is currently being offered, we are continuing that into next year's budget. And just to kind of give you, and then some other items that are noted on the right, again, some targeted equipment and upgrades and things like that. And it really just comes down to safety with some of these things within the athletics, and some of them are just necessary in order to ensure safety of our teams and all the rest. So there are some targeted increases there. But again, we're just happy to be able to continue all the co-curricular and the sports for our students. And that is the end of our shortened presentation, just kind of giving some budget highlights and in particular focusing on the investment areas of this year's budget. So
Thank
I
you,
can,
Marie.
no problem. I can
Yes.
stop presenting. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to go to some questions on this or go right into the questions already submitted that Melissa's prepared to speak to. How do you want to handle it, Stacy and Heather?
We haven't had any questions come in on the chat yet, so I'm not sure if anybody has any current questions.
I see Maury has his, Maury has
a
hand up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Maury.
Is he muted, Bill, maybe?
Are you able to unmute yourself? Yeah, Maury just unmuted. Go ahead.
Good. Yeah, no, that was a bit of a struggle. Anyway, I saw that there were 3.4 additional hires, teachers for the special ed portion of it, plus some other support staff. Is this reflecting an increase in the number of special ed kids that we have in the school system? And if it is it a consequence of an increasing prevalence of kids in need of these services in our population in the U.S.?
Maury, I got the first part. Someone's, what was an increase in what? I missed that. It got a little garbled. I'm sorry.
Sorry, the notice was that we have more personnel coming in
Yes.
to
Right,
help with special ed. The
right.
question
I got that.
is it because we have more kids? And if we do have more kids in need in our population, is it because of a general increase of the prevalence of special needs kids across the
Right,
board in the U.S.?
All right, I got it. Very good question. I can speak a little bit, and then I think Melissa and Maureen can round it out. So the increases are directly tied to the particular needs of special ed students. And as you may know, from a public school budgeting standpoint, for special ed, it often is based on individual need, and then you build that up. The rest of public ed funding is more for group-based, as opposed to that very specific individual needs. And that's a whole structure, which is, we can explain, you probably understand. So we have increased needs in very specific ways that require the additional staffing. In addition, with a much more systematic look that the special ed families and communities have been asking for a long time in Hastings, with a much more systematic look, we're trying to build in more of a continuum of services, which does relate to staffing issues. And with that, the hope is to provide much more availability for within the district and help students not have to leave the district for their special ed services. But Melissa and Maureen can add to that. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd like to add to what you were saying, so that with the continuum of services, to make sure that we are best positioned to meet the needs of students throughout the district, that sometimes requires a modification to the numbers of staff we have. So if someone needs an ICT versus a consultant teacher classroom, that requires different types of staffing. So those decisions get made during the CSE meetings, Committee on Special Education meetings. So it's not so much about having an influx of many more students who require services to the district, but really thinking about the types of services that we're giving, making sure that we get the ratios right. And then as we are looking to do more and be more in terms of special education continuum, we need to make sure that we are providing that appropriate pathway.
And one of the things I just want to address, I think Maury had a good question at the end. I think it's something, if you look at the classification rates in the last even 5 years or so, right? I mean, just beyond Hastings, not just in Hastings, I'm speaking to, there's been a significant increase in terms of just classification rates of students. So I think it's not unique to Hastings. I think that is, to your question, something I think all school districts, I know that all school districts are seeing similar increases in the classification of special ed students. And therefore, many also find themselves making these type of, like you said, it's student-based and, prioritizing it within their budget, because again, it's based on individual student need and IEP. And we're also legally required to do, beyond that, it's the right thing to do. There's also a legal requirement to increase staffing when needed, in particular the sports staff. Sorry. So I think, sorry.
Want to move now to the, Marilyn's got a question.
Hi. I realize you've probably talked about this at some of the board meetings when reviewing the budget, and I haven't been able to make it. I was just curious if briefly you could talk about the extra support needed for just general math studies and ELA. You mentioned that as part of the budget, but just a brief summary of what's going on this year with that.
Melissa.
Yeah,
So,
Melissa, why don't you take that?
Sure. So, in general, we make sure that any student that is in need of support is going through the MTSS process. So we have a multi-tiered system of supports. We identify a student's need, and then targeted interventions are put into place. And those interventions start within tier 1, which is within the classroom, right? So we do everything we can to make sure that we are maximizing differentiated instruction and targeted help when students need that. And then that gets progress monitored. So there are times when a student needs an elevated level of support, so they continue to receive support in the classroom, and then they would need additional support of an interventionist. So our elementary school and our middle school have math interventionists. Maureen was explaining earlier around that shift in the executive functioning position would now become a dedicated reading interventionist. So we have been providing reading intervention in the middle school. It's been done through the provision of multiple people taking on students. And this allows us to have a dedicated approach where we are where we're shifting that particular person to be able to provide the targeted support. Previously, we had, and now I'm going back like 7 years ago, we had a model where there was a part-time coaching, part-time intervention. And when we looked at the data around that, it's hard to do either of those things very well when a person is split between coaching and intervention. And that just has to do with how many students can you actually serve as you're splitting up your day. So what Maureen spoke to in terms of this budget, it was really important for us to have that dedicated intervention, that additional intervention, so that we can provide that support earlier in the middle school as we do in the elementary school. So we're scooping up kids and providing that support and making sure students are getting what they need in addition to the differentiation in the classroom.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
There is a question in the chat as well. Do you see it?
In the chat, it says, "Hi, about a year ago, I attended a board meeting and a senior asked the board to waive, can't remember the term she used, the taxes for seniors in Hastings, and gave Dobbs Ferry School District as an example for where something like this is already happening. Did you guys work on this or looked at her request for seniors in Hastings?"
Well, I can pick up on this one. So I don't recall the meeting, but what I will share, and I know this for a fact with Dobbs Ferry, so there's no ability for us to waive taxes in its entirety for seniors. But what we have done and do currently do is we do adopt each year the senior exemption. So there are currently two ways in which are targeted ways to provide some tax relief to seniors. One of which comes from New York State, which is named Senior Star, right? Or which is an enhanced exemption or an enhanced amount of exemption that seniors who earn below a certain threshold are eligible for. And we know In our village, I have to look at the number. I want to throw, there may be 100 or 100 and so. I'd have to look at my sheet, but because when we file our star each year, I know how many people fall into each category. So we know that there's a number of folks that have been receiving that. In addition to that, and maybe this is what Dobbs Ferry also does this similar to Hastings. We adopt the maximum exemptions under law we're able to do for seniors, but it is income based. So it's I don't have it in front of me, but I could, we can share it at a later time just to ensure that people are aware of it. It allows for, and you have to file through the town of Greenberg, right, to be, because they're the ones who do the taxes. And if you earn between different brackets, depending on your income levels for your household, you're eligible for different types of reductions. It goes for anywhere from a 5%, 10, 15, or 20, up to 50% of exemption on school property taxes. And a few years ago, that the income rates for that had been the same. And again, not because Hastings said it that way. It was something to do with the way the state was. They hadn't modified that chart for 10, I think it was 15 years. So we're not able to change it. We have to adopt it as it was in law. When that, after 15 years, I think it was 2 years ago, they finally made a significant change, meaning obviously the income levels you can make were much higher to still receive exemptions. Not all boards adopted that new chart, nor were they required to do. We did adopt a new chart, meaning we are offering the highest level of exemptions to our seniors that are available under law. So that's a lot of words, but I just wanted to break down the various things that we have. Of course, is the star being the states, and then of course the local exemption. We do participate in it and have always, quite frankly. So it may be similar to, and occasionally I think if someone is not receiving, I think they may be eligible. I would suggest either to reach out to the town of Greenberg, to the assessor's office, and they could assist in that. And if you have no luck there, you could always reach out to me on my email, and I could help you walk through that process to see if you'd be eligible. So.
Do you want, Melissa, why don't you go into your responses and then we'll come back up for more general Q&A. Does that make sense, Stacy and
Sure.
Heather? Okay.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm going to share my screen. Let me just get that set up. Okay, sorry, this is all right. Can you see the slides? Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful.
It's a little.
All right. All right, let me get the slideshow mode going. I can no longer see all of you, but I can see my slides and you can too, so that's perfect. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I received 2 curriculum questions that came my way. The first one was about math rigor and accountability. The statement was, our math outcomes appear to lag peer districts. What concrete steps are being taken to raise rigor? And
Melissa,
how are you?
I can no longer see the slides. I'm not sure if anybody else is
No,
having.
I can't see them either, and it's a little
Interesting.
like
Blurry.
fuzzy too. It's
Very
blurry.
Okay, let me stop sharing the screen here.
Apologies.
No, it's okay. Let's try again. And if I can't share easily, then Maureen, maybe what I'll do is I'll punt the deck to you to share. Would that be okay? Share screen. Here we go.
I'm talking with my mute on. I said,
How's that?
I can see them right now. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, let's try again.
There
yeah,
you
that's
Yes?
yes.
Wonderful. Okay. So the first question was around rigor and accountability. Our math outcomes appear to lag peer districts. What concrete steps are being taken to raise rigor, and how are you addressing data gaps if students opt out of New York State Education Department exams? And then the second was about advanced student support. The district is strong on IEP support, but what is being done to challenge high achieving students? How are you closing the preparedness gap? versus peer districts. So I will take the first question, and I will have slides here that can remain in the record so that you have them. But what I'd like to do is take you through some regional comparisons, because there was that statement that we appear to lag behind similar districts. So what you are looking at right now is our most recent data, 3 through 8 mathematics testing. And the group that we are compared with here is our Southern Westchester counterparts. All right. So when you are looking at count, CNT, what you are looking at in that column is the number of students who took the assessment. So for Math 3, 101, for Math 4, 117, Math 5, 114, Math 6, 126 students tested, Math 7, 122, Math 8, 105. And I'll speak to that in a little bit as it pertains to refusals. But overall, we now, since I've come here, actually, this has changed quite a bit. We have a healthy amount of participation in the state assessments. When you're looking at the metric column, I set it to proficiency or above. So it's telling us the story of the percentage of students who scored at or above a level 3. When you're looking at value, you're looking at what percentage of the students in that particular grade met or exceeded the proficiency standard, which is considered level 3. So if you get a level 3 or a level 4, that is going to show up in the value. So for Math 3, 89% scored at or above proficiency. Math 4, 83.8% scored at or above proficiency, and so on as you look down that column. The next column is rank. That tells the story of how Hastings ranks for that particular grade level as compared with the region, and it's sitting alongside a total, which is the next column. So, for example, in Math 3, we ranked 4th out of the 27 districts. So the last column there shows us shows the percentile rank, right? So you're looking at 85th for percentile rank. All right. Math 4, we ranked 16 out of 27. Math 5, 17 out of 27. Math 6, 21st out of 28 districts that tested. Math 7, 11 out of 29. Math 8, 5 out of 28. All right, so I've memorialized those, the key on the next slide, just to avoid any confusion, but that was what I just spoke to. And then some key takeaways to be thinking about in terms of rigor and accountability before we go into the rest of the question is we are seeing variations in performance relative to the Southern Westchester BOCES region, depending on which grade students are in. And for me, from a curriculum standpoint, it speaks to the fact that we need far more coherence in our math program, because if you're seeing some students outperforming most of our counterparts and others underperforming counterparts, that variability shows that we need to strengthen the coherence as kids are moving through the system, which is what we already knew. So we are outperforming the region in a number of grades, grades 3, 7, and 8. And I put the percentile rank there for us. And then we are underperforming the region in grades 4, 5, and 6. And I would argue grade 4, even though it's definitely in the underperforming range, it's more solidly in the middle as compared with 5th and 6th grade. So like I said earlier, the majority of our students take the state ed math assessment. Students do not opt out of Regents exams because they need them right now to graduate. We have very few refusals at this point. So I just pulled up this year's refusals, and we're in a mathematics assessment period right now. So at the middle school, all across grades 5 through 8, we only have 36 students who refused. And then in the elementary school, grades 3 and 4, even fewer when you're breaking it down by grade, 7 students across grades 3 and 4. So you're seeing not many refusals overall. But when a student does refuse the state assessment, we use other data. So we are always triangulating data. We're looking at the Renaissance Star Diagnostic Screener. We're looking at course grades. We're looking at real-time work. We're looking at end-of-unit assessments. So all of those things help us to identify student strengths and learning gaps. So when a student is not taking the state test, we still have other ways of looking at the student. That said, the state tests are a helpful metric in the sense that if a student doesn't meet the proficiency standards, districts are obligated, and they use more than one measure, but at a certain point, districts are obligated to provide additional support to students. So the state assessments through a curricular lens are very helpful in two ways. One, it helps us look at our program and the extent to which we're coherent, which again, we need to strengthen that. And then the second thing it does is it does flag individual areas of need for students, and allow us to either expedite additional support services and also provide targeted support based on what that assessment is showing, while considering other areas of assessment like the diagnostic screener and the grades. So some concrete steps, what are we doing? So we have implemented a data review cycle, so that is ongoing, and that has really helped us to drill into data. We have MTSS support, and we've been working on strengthening our MTSS support. At a previous meeting, at a board meeting, I spoke to a Fast Bridge platform that we were piloting. Fast Bridge allows us to identify areas of need for students and then track within a platform really specific things that have been done as interventions and how students are responding to that. So that is a concrete step we've taken. Professional development. We are very focused in improving outcomes and improving coherence as students move through the system. That professional development with Anshula Sobrin. Dr. Sobrin has been absolutely exceptional. We have been very, very thankful to learn from her, and she's helped us not only when we're thinking about pathways for students and we're introducing some of those accelerated course options in the middle school, but as we are thinking about outcomes from a standards perspective and what needs to shift to be able to be more coherent and not have students essentially skip an entire year of mathematics if they are taking an accelerated course. She teaches in real time. So as we're thinking about what the content is that students need to be learning, we are all talking about the practice standards. We are talking about how to bring the standards to life. We are talking about ways in which students can demonstrate proficiency. So all of that professional development is around strengthening practice as much as it is about strengthening pathways for students. AIS, the high school students who perform under a 70 on the algebra regents and a 75 in the algebra or geometry course, as an example, will be receiving AIS. And so that is a concrete step we are taking. And then differentiated instruction. So that I've just finished figuring out membership in our K-12 mathematics committee, and that will be going back out to the faculty soon. We will have some dedicated time with Dr. Sobrin to do some visioning work and to be thinking about where we are headed in terms of our program and making sure it's coherent and setting some concrete goals. And ultimately, that committee is a decision-making body. We will be looking at and investigating mathematics resources. And one of the key things that will be important in the selection of those resources is that we are strengthening differentiation within the classroom. So not just an accelerated course, but what is happening within whatever that course is, so that students have their needs met, both when they're meeting standards, above the standard, or approaching the standard. The second question that was received that I displayed was around advanced student support, challenging high achieving students. So some examples from our principals that I'm happy to speak to that they provided. So in Hillside, some ways that we are providing advanced student support, differentiated instruction, also differentiated problem solving in terms of the mathematics problems that students have access to. After school mathematics enrichment will be happening next year. At the middle school, math progressions and pathways, making adjustments to our accelerated offerings. At the high school, access to a wide range of highly rigorous college level coursework. So we're talking about AP and SUPA and University of Albany. Opportunities to take multiple college level courses beginning in the 11th grade. And then our students continue to be accepted and matriculate at many of the most highly selective schools in the country and in the world. So those are responses to those two questions, and I thank you.
Thanks,
And there were a few
Melissa.
questions. Oh, sorry, Stacy, that's for you to run. Go ahead, please.
That's okay. I was just going to say there was a question that came in. It says, are there certain profiles of children opting out?
It's a great question, Jen. I don't have the data in front of me. We do have very few, but I can look into that. I think it's important that we are making sure that we definitely know that. I know when I first came to this district many years ago, there was a profile of students that were opting out. I was seeing an increase in our ENL students and our students with IEPs. And that was pretty clear to me when I first arrived. Then I saw that start to disappear. I have to go back into the data. The numbers that I showed tonight were very, very recent. We're in the state assessment period right now, so I'll have to check on it for this year.
It looks like Jody has a question. Jody Meyer.
Thanks, Heather. Melissa, I was just thinking about, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but the piece about the underperforming and overperforming grades. Was there any relationship, do you think, or how did COVID, do you think, played into those numbers and those dynamics?
It's hard to say, Jody. I think that, let's see. I got here in 2019, which is exactly when it hit, right? So I learned a few names and figured out how to navigate the building, and then we went into lockdown. So it was immediate. So let's see. So we are now in 2026. So that's about, we're looking at fifth and sixth grade, right? So yeah, we are seeing it's a wondering, right? I think we can't attribute causality, but it is a wondering. Yeah, it's a good point. And especially when it comes to literacy, mathematics is very much a literacy test as much as it is a mathematics test too.
Mm-hmm.
Students have to interpret. And so being able to have access to certain texts, we did the best we could without having students in the building, but we are seeing areas of need. I don't have a concrete answer to that, but it's a good thing to keep our eye on.
I mean, a quick comparison would be, and we didn't run the ELA data here, right? If we looked at that, that would be an indicator. I think it may be more, we've got an issue in the middle school, and we're working on it. I think that differential from like districts in the region would be a little surprising, but I think the first check would be to cross-reference it with ELA and other assessments. But it's a good question, Jody. For Hastings, I'm not sure. Other districts there was a Harvard-Stanford study done, and a lot of districts like this actually did quite well coming through the COVID period. I'm not saying Hastings wasn't in that group, but we can go Google it and find it. I hate to say it, but if we could mute, please, if you're not.
I'm gonna throw in the garbage. I'll put you in.
Yeah. Well, so we can dig into it. It's a great question, Jody. Other questions?
Stacy, that's it that we have for our written questions. If there's any other questions from audience participants, please chime in. The PTSA just wants to remind everyone here to please vote next Tuesday, the 19th. And that's at the Corcoran Gym, right, in the high school. Again, if there's any other questions, feel free to ask. Here we go.
Yep. Maury, go ahead. Maury's go.
Not really a question, but a request that a glossary of some kind be employed. So for those of us who are not in the jargon of the field, to know what all the abbreviations stand for and some of the terminology, what coherence specifically means in the context expressed here. Things like that would be helpful for those of us who are not in this all the time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Maury, good question. I think some terms like coherence, we can kind of, that is it holding together and connecting? I mean, that's kind of how we talk about it. Is there consistency within a grade level? Is there consistency across? But, in sort of plain English, and it's a great point by you, Maury, is it connecting and holding together in what our work with the students and the teachers? I think what we can do is we can go back through the presentation where there are any acronyms or other such things. We can plop a glossary at the end. It's a great suggestion. If there are no other questions, I appreciate, again, I want to put a big thank you out to Heather and Stacy and Tanya and Jen's our SEPTA PTSA partners. I'm going to repeat the beginnings because some weren't on yet, but great partnership with us. We meet virtually, formally once a month, and I always thank them for bringing me the truth, and that includes in those monthlies Maureen and Melissa, Jean Ferrigio, and now Jen Holder. After Jean leaves her interim post, Jen Holder, our incoming assistant super PPS, will be actively part of that. It's critical to me that we've got right at the top of all these discussions our expertise on all aspects of teaching and learning for all students. And that's what Jen and Melissa together bring us, the business acumen and operational acumen that Maureen brings, sitting then every month with PTSA SEPTA. They also meet at the building level. Many may not know that. They have building level committees and they're very active there. So they are critical partners for us, and in a critical friend way, to use a phrase that many of us like. I will reiterate as I did in the beginning, and I know Jody wants to say something. At the beginning, I said the capital bond is a wonderful issue, totally separate from this budget. The operating budget for the operating and instructional, that's this year. For the next year, the money we need to run the district to a high quality level for all of our students and families. Any questions, comments, and concerns about the capital bond? I love those. I love hearing them. I know the board does, but that is a separate issue. Any concerns there should be dealt with in that realm of the capital bond. You will vote your conscience next Tuesday. Just hope you think about what we need for the coming year to bring all this great programming ongoing for all our students. Jody, I think you had something to say.
Well, I think I wanted to piggyback on that, Bill. First, I wanted to thank the PTSA and SEPTA for doing this. I'm sorry that there aren't more people here, but people's lives don't make it so easy these days. But Maury, thank you for coming. I think it's great that you're here. Maury and I go way back to the soccer field. Bill, you would like it, to a great soccer team, Bill, that made it all the way up to the States. But I wanted to reiterate and hope that the PTSA would be helpful, SEPTA would be helpful in getting that word out. I do have concerns. I feel like things are starting to get a little bit moving ugly around turf. And having lived through it before, I know how it can go. And my worry is that the timing of this, that people who are in the opposed to the turf camp will use this as an opportunity to express themselves and will vote against the budget, even though the budget, as Bill said, has nothing to do with the bond or or with the third proposition, particularly of the bond, any of the bond really, but as a way to register their complaints with the district. But ultimately, it really will just be hurtful to the kids in the district, because when we have to, what we have to do when a budget gets voted down really ultimately just hurts the schools and the teachers and the kids most of all. So I feel pretty strongly, and I think we're talking about on Sunday, there's a spring thing in town, and the Board of Ed will have one of the tables. And so we're trying to come together around what we can say about the budget, and also try to help people understand that it's separate from turf, even though I know we'll also probably be talking turf. But anyway, so anything, I think if we can all try to get that message out, I think it's really an important one, that we find a way to support the budget and deal with all of our differences, apart from ways that would be hurtful in terms of the operating budget for the school for kids. Anyway, thank you.
Sorry, I thought I was done, but piggybacking on the piggyback. So the concern about the fields being a leverage kind of issue for those who are opposed to passing school budgets, bonds in general, and anything negative in the present climate with reports of 3.8% inflation rate. It's easy to inflame things, I think. So I agree with Jody from that perspective. I thought that the bond, sorry to raise it, I know it was off limits for today, but that the cost of the bond hasn't started yet. Is that correct? Or do we start to pay for it in this coming year?
Only not the bond itself. There is some money for like a ban interest, just to kind of pay for professional services and things like that. Not the main debt does not come on for at least another year or two.
So the point really is, this is going to be the increment in our taxes for the school, not the bond. Is that right? It's not an additive thing here. This is it. Or is that wrong?
You
Are
mean
there two increments to our taxes?
within the budget, there is a small amount of what is called ban interest, which is a bond anticipation note. But there is a lot of beyond the fields. There's other work that is happening, such as HVAC, fixing a lot of the masonry around the building. So the bond, really funding the bond, that will not hit taxes for another year or two.
That's the point I'm trying to make, is that this is the only increase to our taxes this coming year.
Yeah,
I think that's an important point also to stress.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's a good point. Good, clear point. Thank you.
Oh, and then I do want to clarify, we did have ban interest in our, just in case I don't want to, within our budget, but we did use our own reserves to offset it. So there is that's kind of tax neutral, because we offset that with revenues that we had toward that. So yeah, so there is nothing is really hitting with the bond this year. But if someone were to see that, I don't want them to say oh, there is a line item there for some ban interest. So
Use the reserves to offset what?
The ban interest.
Are we all set? Anything else? Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you virtually coming out on a Tuesday evening. And it is recorded. I appreciate Marilyn Campbell noting it's recorded. And I really thank my colleagues, Maureen and Melissa, for especially tight, focused presentations. And all good. Onward we go.
Thank you all. We appreciate it.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.